Folks, having a long-term U.S. Treasury is not safe. I'm here to tell you. If you think you can't trust the dollar, 6 months from now, what it's going to purchase in the grocery store, you certainly can't trust it 20 or 30 years from now. And that's what the markets are telling us. The markets are showing us without a shadow of a doubt that we're in a position where the dollar is on its last days.
This is Kaiser Johnson with our specials for the week of Cyber Monday from November 27th through December 4th, 2023, while supplies last. First, we feature 1/10-ounce gold eagles at $32 over melt with a minimum of 5 coins. Next, silver Nordic Mint 5-ounce bars at just $1.99 over spot per ounce with a minimum purchase of 10 bars. We also have 1-ounce silver 2023 Britannia at $2.69 over spot when you order 50 or more coins. And finally, Dealer's Choice silver 10-ounce bars are just $1.49 over spot per ounce with a minimum of 4 bars. To order our specials or any of the many other options we have available, call us at 1-888-81-LIBERTY. That's 1-888-815-4237. We're available after hours and on weekends, and we look forward to speaking with you.
Welcome back to Liberty and Finance. We're privileged to have this returning guest who's been widely followed for decades. David Morgan is known as the Silver Guru. He's also the founder of themorganreport.com. He joins us this Saturday, November 25th, 2023. David, thanks for coming back on Liberty and Finance.
Donegan, it's great to be back. Thank you.
Always our privilege to have you back on. Met you in person at the first ever Liberty Mastermind Symposium in Dallas, Texas, way back when, and have been following your work both before that and afterwards. You've interviewed with my son Elijah on his channel prior to this channel, and then with us ever since. Always looking to you for, I guess, your thoughtful and seasoned and educated view, the long view and the philosophical view of what's going on, as well as being able to deep dive into some of the details. Since it's approaching the end of 2023, a lot of people have been watching the metals as a potential safe haven from the chaos that's been going on in our fiscal and monetary world and the world of banking and the other equity markets and everything showing signs of strain, the debt market showing signs of strain. And we wanted you, if you could first kick us off with a year in review, looking at 2023 in review for the precious metals and what your view of the outcome and the outlook are for them.
Absolutely. So this comes from Bob Johnson, and Bob does it's called Gold Sheet Mail. I've been on it for years, and just a shout out to Bob. Kind of in my opinion, a quiet guy, but he does great work, and I'm grateful that he does these numbers so I don't have to. So what's interesting, Dunnigan, is what's gone on in the metals this year. We'll start with the precious metals, but gold, the only two that are up on the year are gold and silver. Gold is up almost 10% from the beginning of the year. Silver is up about 1.5% from the beginning of the year. Palladium is off almost 40%, and platinum is off about 12%. I want to expand on that. So gold is at 95% of its all-time high. So it's almost at its all-time. Silver is at 47% of its all-time high. So it's got to double, a little more than double from here to get to its all-time high. Platinum and palladium are at about 37%. So about 1/3 of where they were at their all-time. So they've got to triple from where they are. I've been pretty bullish on platinum for some time, and I continue to be bullish on platinum. There's many reasons. We've outlined it in great detail in our premium service. I won't bore you with it here, but and I also did a spread trade, short palladium and long platinum, and that's worked out very well. But I want to talk about the other metals briefly because there's a fair amount in our peer group that are about this super cycle of commodities, and I really don't buy into that too much. There could be, and I think there would be, a super cycle in the monetary metals and in the ags, but stuff that you really need. You need to eat, and the metals are a way to protect wealth. So anyway, let's just go through this real briefly. There's not one metal element in the base metal group that's up this year. Aluminum's off 8%, cobalt's off 36%, copper's flat, down 1%, Lead's off 6%, nickel's down 47%, tin's off 3%, and zinc is off 16%. Not even one of those is up. So, I'm just trying to make the point that we are in a massive contraction in the economy on a physical level. I'm not talking about how much money they've printed showing positive GDP. I'm telling you the truth. As far as the stocks go, the HUI is off 1%. The XAU, the main index for the top tier mining companies, is off about 3.5%. The dollar is flat. Crude is down 6%. Heating oil is down 16%. Natural gas is off 32%. And gasoline is off 14%. So I think that's a pretty good look at the year end coming into the year end. I think gold could get a bit of a lift here, maybe get a new high before the end of the year. I wouldn't get too excited until we get above the new high, which is, I think, 2070 in US dollar terms, and stay there. We've got to stay there for several trading sessions in a row before I'm convinced that we have a new bull market unfolding where resistance becomes support and we're going to continue upward. I believe that will happen. I'm almost certain it'll happen in 2024. I'm not sure how strong gold will be going into the end of the year.
So what you've described, we were for years talking with you and others about the bubble of everything, where we had, for the first time in history, we've had stocks and bonds and real estate all in a three-way bubble, all in record territory, no matter how you measured it, compared to other real things. And yet it seems like at the moment we're seeing sort of this retraction of everything. The real estate market is struggling, the stock market is struggling, the bond market is struggling. And how does that play out from your view in terms of this contracting the physical economy contracting? At some point, we've heard from others say that there will be a rotation and a flight to safety, and others have said that, in fact, the smart money has been quietly getting into physical precious metals or taking possession of physical precious metals, repatriating, whether it's sovereign wealth funds or whether it's sovereign banks repatriating precious metals for years now. Any insight from your side on what has been happening as far as the biggest moneyed players positioning themselves ahead of this retraction?
Right. Well, it is a big contraction. I want to talk about the retail market. And this was on Market Watch not too long ago. It's on my Twitter feed if you want to dive in a little bit deeper. But there's more U.S. companies that have gone bankrupt in 2023 so far than all of 2022 or 2021. And so the article goes on to say that the S&P Global Market Intelligence has recorded 459 filings as of August 31st, excuse me, with companies that have gone bankrupt, with 373 for all of 2022 and 408 for all of 2021. That's still well below the 639 recorded in 2020 when the pandemic forced a lot of companies into Chapter 11. But remember, this is the end of August. We've got September, October, November. We've got 3 more months and 4 till the end of the year. And whether we'll get to that big number of 639 from 459, I doubt it. But point being is that there's huge contraction. And these are big companies, Sears and Roebuck, Kohl's, Bed Bath & Beyond, and many of the corporate restaurants like Hardee's, Applebee's. There's many of these restaurants that are closing not their entire inventory, but many of their stores that are not profitable. So again, it just goes to my point of look out your window to tell the truth. Don't listen to the, pundits necessarily that say, you got to get into the stock market, because the stock market's manipulated with these 7 stars, and they take the 7 most profitable and largest leveraged companies, leverage meaning to make the average look good. And those are bought, and they're bought so that the DJI and the S&P 500 look good. But when you look at the broader market and you look out your window and see how many of these corporate restaurants, how many bankruptcies there are, how many like Nordstrom's are closing many of their stores, what's Macy's doing. All this stuff just looks you right back and says, we are moving into not only a recession, but possibly a depression. And I'm not trying to be negative. I'm just being real. And the real truth is that you're not getting the truth from the mainstream media. I think we all know that. That's why channels like Liberty and Finance are so critical to give you insights to make better decisions. And you need to take action at this point. I think it's beyond just talk at this point. If you haven't taken action, I think the time is nigh. I mean, I don't think it's 3 days away, but it's getting closer and closer all the time. And you may want to start prepping now, and maybe you're a little bit late to the party, but you might go out and find certain things that aren't available because the economy is contracting, and even in the prepper modality. Those, let's say those little bitty solar panels that you can use to charge your cell phone, for example. I'm just making this up. I'm not saying this is the case, but they might not be as available as they once were, that type of thing. So I know you feel a sense of urgency, and it's, the takeaway. It's not going to be there, the fear of missing out, but it's true. And that's why I'm saying that. It's not because I don't get any profit by selling solar chargers for anyone, but I am concerned and things accelerate on the downside too. Markets go down faster than they go up. So I'll just leave it there and take the next question.
Well, I want to follow up on something that you mentioned there, and that's the reality that the observable reality that people can see with their own eyes. In our neck of the woods here, it's the fifth fastest growing county in the country and the fastest growing county in the state of Florida. And yet the closest mall to us, which is not that old, you go through there and it's eerie, it's scary. There's way more than half the stores are shuttered and coming soon or for rent, for lease, that sort of thing. Even some of the anchor tenants have moved out. It's not a honor to your local retail establishment when they have to have one of these Halloween stores that moves in there, because they're looking for cheap, empty places to sell stuff in the Halloween season. And that's what we're seeing in the closest mall to where we currently live. So we've been through this before. You've been around a long time. You've watched a lot of these cycles, these boom and bust cycles, and you've also watched the official narrative and government statistics that try to try to put a good spin on these times when they're happening. What have we seen before? And you also mentioned in that same breath about the leaders versus laggards in the major stock indices. So you've got the Dow Jones Industrials of 30 stocks, you've got the S&P 500 of 500 stocks, and yet there's only a handful of companies that are holding up that entire weighted index, and the breadth of those stock markets looks terrible as far as what those companies, what their stocks are doing, what their profitability. Many of them are zombies, almost half, etc. Can you talk to us about when have we seen this sort of thing before, and what were the realities and the gaps of truth, the truth gaps that evolved between the official statistics that we were being fed versus what was really going on the ground when we've seen this before?
Well, I've been through a few recessions, as you stated, and I've seen it, in, let's say, a couple of recessions. I won't give the exact dates because my memory fails as far as exact dates, but never to this degree. I've never seen it where we've had, major retailers like Sears. I mean, Sears, we had Penny's fail in like one of the recessions. JCPenney's. And that was like, oh my goodness. But that was like not the only one, but there weren't that many. And yet, like, Sears has held on. In fact, the guy that took over Sears as the CEO was basically an Austrian school believer. And, Sears has been around since the early, 1900s. I mean, it's a 100-year-old situation that went under. So I have not seen a recession of this magnitude and this much of an acceleration, because remember what we started with. This is the biggest amount of failures since in the last 3 years, and not quite as big as 2020. So if you look at 2020, 2021, 2022, and 2023 so far, we have 4 years of a major contraction in the economy. Those 639 failures in 2020 with COVID, And then you put the 400 and whatever it was 40 about for this year. That's 1,000 retail stores that most people are familiar with, at least the big ones, that have gone bankrupt. And yet stock market's still near an all-time high. I mean, that doesn't compute. It doesn't make any sense. And that's what I'm trying to say. So I will say it. What's the comparison? It's called the Great Depression. That's the comparison. It's that kind of a contraction that very few people are willing to say. But of course, channels like yours will give us a free market rein and let us state our views, our opinions. Mine's a studied opinion. I'm not making it up to shock or scare people. I'm saying it because you're not going to hear it anywhere else. And it's true. That's why I'm saying it. So as far as I am concerned, we are headed for more than a recession, as I said earlier. But that doesn't mean it's the end of the world. Doesn't mean you can't go to the mall and find something to buy. But it does mean that a lot of things that we took for granted up till 2019, for an example, you cannot take for granted anymore. We've hit the reign of plenty. We've had an overcapacity, oversupply, too much stuff. And now it's going to where at some point in the not too distant future, there'll be too little stuff. It'll be hard to find certain staples. It'll be hard to find certain things you used to take for granted. Your favorite cereal, your favorite whatever, may be out of business, never to return or not to return for a very long time. So that's what I'm saying. Again, the Depression was obviously a tough time for almost everyone. And yet there were still, bright lights during the Great Depression. There were businesses that went on to become very, very good. And the opportunity in the Depression is to find out what's really needed by people and fulfill that need. And if you can think ahead, especially with the internet as a opportunity base that doesn't cost much to do a startup, I just say for the audience, think about that. Think about what's needed in harder times and how you can provide a service doing that. And it's an opportunity, really, especially for those that may be out of work or looking to get out of the work they're doing now or whatever. So, but I just want to move on. I mean, you ask me anything you want, then again, after we finish that, I'd like to move on to the banking crisis.
Well, yeah, that's what I was going to ask you next. Back again to harkening back to the Great Depression of the 1930s. My mom told me about how my grandfather on her side was a small business owner, put under extreme pressure by that depression, and his hands would just shake when he'd read the newspaper, saying that he saw farmers having to dump their crops because they weren't even profitable enough to take them to the market, farmers being foreclosed on, losing their farms, losing their businesses, losing their land, etc., to the banks, who was scooping it up for pennies on the dollar, and bank failures wiping out people's savings. Can you talk to us about the impact of the truth, when you talked about the contraction of the real physical economy in the face of the lying statistics that we get from government sources, when the truth hurts, who gets hurt the most? And if people are trying to protect themselves by withdrawing their deposits in the bank before those turn into bail-ins, et cetera, runs on the bank, then that can lead to concern from the banks to push back against that. We've had people have difficulty sending bank wires sometimes because they have to go through so many levels of approval to send their money out of the bank, et cetera. What are your concerns based on the data that you're seeing about the strains that the banking system is under, and what the outlook is for the potential of runs on the banks when people are seeking flight to safety?
Yeah, great question. So in the 30s, why did so many farmers and merchants and whatever go out of business? This isn't really well published, but a lot of loans were called callable, C-A-L-L, callable loans. So you were making your mortgage payment. Maybe your grandfather had enough business for a while to make his payment. But then the bank, if it was a callable loan, and many were, say, hey, your farm, and these numbers sound ridiculously small compared to what they are today because I'm doing it on an inflation-adjusted basis, but they called up your grandfather and said, hey, you owe us $4,000. You got 30 days to pay it. And no one could do a callable loan. That's like paying your mortgage off, instantly. I mean, how many people can do that? Very, 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 very few. So that just squeezed the middle class on down in America. So just want to get that out there. So what these banks can do. They did this, in my view, in more or less a deliberate manner. But that's a story for another day. So the question was, what about now? Yeah, I've gotten many instances where people have contacted me and asked, what can they do? Their bank doesn't want to send a wire to Miles Franklin for gold. They're saying that no, and it's their money. Well, that's another story. I mean, the deposit you make isn't your money, and that just freaks people out. But that's the truth. You're an unsecured depositor, and it's the bank's money, and you're giving them a loan. And so, do they have control over their money? And that's a legal question I can't answer. But what I can give you is more than one incident. In fact, numerous, and it's becoming more prevalent, as you outlined, where people call up and they want to wire money, not necessarily for precious metals, for any business transaction, a loan payoff, a down payment on a house, whatever it might be. And these banks are giving a lot of pushback. And it's like, well, what's the money for? They never asked that before. It's like, wire 10 grand to, XYZ entity. And they did it. It's supposedly my money, and I want to make this wire. And a lot of the online transactions, HSBC was down for a while. One of my friends in Panama, now whether it was just the Panama branches of HSBC or not, I do not know. I do know he's in Panama, and I do know he sent me a photograph of what the bank sent him, and it's basically can't do anything. We're down for online banking. And this is happening more and more. And if that doesn't scare you, I don't know what does. As far as the bank run is concerned, that happened in the 2008 crisis. I forget I think it was a congressman, Kosorski or something like that. You may recall, Dunnigan. And there's a video out there still. It maybe have been removed. They talked about the banks are starting to panic because there was an electronic run on the banks. And people were taking their money out because you can do it in many instances if you're on online banking and move your bank funds into, let's say, the stock market or into the money market or into Treasury Now and buy T-bills. And so the banks really panicked in 2008. Well, that's happened again because the interest rates have gone up and most people are getting next to nothing on their bank account. Are moving into money market funds, which takes them out of the banking system and also into T-bills. I think it's Treasury Now. You can go to and buy it directly yourself. It's not very difficult. So the liquidity of the bank with the deposits of your money that they consider or is legally theirs is shrinking rapidly. And this, of course, is very, very difficult for the banks because most of their securities to back up their business of banking is in 20-year and 30-year bonds that they have to sell at a discount because the interest rates are so high. So to make them pay the 5% that's required for somebody to buy the bond, they've got to discount the bond 30, 40%. And this is huge losses on their books. And so we're in a mess. And, my advice is if you have more than $250,000 in the bank, you should really consider putting that extra somewhere else. Obviously, I think the precious metals is probably the safest. I don't believe in real estate right now. Mike Maloney, my friend, did a special update on Thanksgiving a couple days ago, talking about the Schiller Index. And that we are in a bigger real estate bubble than we were in 2008 when he called it. And Mike was traveling around with Robert Kiyosaki at the time. And Robert would open up with, real estate is going to have a big bust. And, of course, he's the king of the real estate investor on a cash flow basis. And he's telling people that are flipping houses or leveraged in the real estate market to get out and get out now. And, of course, he's right. And now Mike is doing it again, saying this is it. And I had to laugh because what he said just resonated with me so strongly. And he said he gets a lot of excuses as why certain areas are exempt from that happening, And I was a broker in Florida, And I said, you're going to have a crash. I was on the same page as Mike, basically. And I said, you're going to have a crash in, real estate. Oh, no, in Florida, it's not going to happen because we've got Disney World and all these tourists, and we've got so much, tourism and so much money, and there's so many high net worth people. The real estate won't affect us. And I thought, man, this is crazy. This guy is so smart and so good at the markets, but he's blind to his own market. And sure enough, the Florida market went down just like everywhere else when the big contraction happened in real estate in 2007 and 8. So I know it sounds doomy gloomy, but again, I'm shooting straight out from the head and the heart. I'm not making anything up. I'm telling you the way I see it. And I think the banking crisis is starting to accelerate. We have this bank in China, and I forget what it is, ICB something. And it's supposedly the largest bank in the world. And they were hit by a cyber attack. And that's something I just don't voice enough because that's my main concern about the financial system is cyber attacks. They were cyber attacked, and it really messed up their ability to transact in the treasury market, which supposedly is the safest place you can be. Folks, having a long-term U.S. Treasury is not safe. I'm here to tell you. If you think you can't trust the dollar, 6 months from now, what it's going to purchase in the grocery store, you certainly can't trust it 20 or 30 years from now. And that's what the markets are telling us. The markets are showing us without a shadow of a doubt that we're in a position where the dollar is on its last days.
One thing you mentioned a little bit ago is that people should start preparing if they haven't already. If they already have started, they should continue and accelerate. One of the concerns that has emerged about those who are preparedness minded, and we've seen this happen in past financial crises or other types of crises, is that those who are the most responsible are those who get punished. Those who are the most irresponsible get bailed out or whatever, or businesses that were, or banks that were, that sort of thing. So there's this term hoarding that gets used. It's a perfectly good word, but it gets used to smear for publicity reasons in a narrative that those who have been hoarding gold, that happened back in the Great Depression. FDR himself said that those people who've been hoarding gold have been tying up the money supply, and that's why we're having so much financial difficulty. So people have to willingly and patriotically turn their gold into the government and get paper receipts for it called dollars instead, and that way we can get ourselves back on our feet. But according to Wayne Jett, the author of Fruits of Graft, Great Depressions Then and Now, he said FDR was one of the instigators who was linchpin behind the deepening and worsening and lengthening of the Great Depression by the actions that he took. Every one of those actions that he took was against the good of the common person and for the good of either very large, the very largest, too big to fail oligarchs or banks, or also those who would take away people's rights and build bureaucracies instead of representative republic that we were supposed to have. So I would like your view from a philosophical and experienced judgment standpoint on perspectives for people who are planning on being responsible and prudent. And whether it's putting in a garden, whether it's getting some land, whether it's finding out where their local farmers are in their area so they have a good connection with people who are a reliable source of food if the big system goes down with a cyber attack or anything else, or people who are planning on stockpiling gold and silver so that they have real money to carry on their life's work and take good care of their family. What would you say to people who are concerned that if they do these things, they're going to be painted as the enemy in the eyes of their friends and neighbors and family by the media and by the government and so on, because they did the right thing, the responsible thing?
That's a great question. I would say to thine own self be true. So in your heart of hearts that this program and others like it are giving you the straight information. So be true to yourself. How do you prepare? Well, starting the garden is really a good place if you can. I mean, even in an apartment, you can put in little, herb gardens or whatever. Not that that's going to save you, but at least you can do something. So do thine own self be true. And then the idea that the truth will set you free. And that's also, maybe overstated, but it is also very important. And to not really be concerned with what others think. If you are true to yourself and your family, then it's not too hard to go out and buy more, foodstuffs, for an example. And I've always recommended, and I was way ahead on this food situation. I was talking about a food shortage about a year and a half before anyone said it in the mainstream. And it doesn't cost you anything more. I mean, it'll cost you more out of your pocketbook, but it's probably the best thing you can do. And certainly buy stuff you really eat. I mean, the idea that you buy, something on sale or whatever that your family doesn't like, that's a bad idea. Unless it's really popular and you can barter with. That'd be the exception. And then as far as freeze-dried food, I have a fair amount of it because it's easy, it's convenient, but it's expensive. You're really better off just buying staples and canned goods than to go that route. But if you have the ability or the need, the good thing is that they're all in buckets. They got a handle. You can grab and go with them. So you could consider that. But I would say, food, water, maybe a second job or something you can do on the side well before you get into gold and silver. And if you have excess savings and you are at a fairly high level, it doesn't have to be above 250,000 if you got 20,000 and you've got, prepped up and you got pretty much everything you need, certainly you can move into the gold or silver market and have that real money outside of the system. Because if the bank freezes up or there's a bank run, or they reset to a new system where you have to have a real ID, and the only way you're going to get access to your funds in the bank is to let the bank go into this real ID system, where I call it the beast system. You're going to be darn happy that you took sufficient account of what's going on in the future and prepared for that. I'll call it eventuality. I don't know if it'll happen or not. I know what the bankers want. Whether it'll be achieved or not remains to be determined. And I'd say in the long run, we win. But in the short run, I think there's going to be a lot more pain and agony, unfortunately. So if you can mitigate that, and one last thing, Doug, again, you probably have some great ideas, is prepare for your neighbors as well, if you can afford it. There's nothing better than, having a community that gets along and realizes the circumstances, and the idea being that there's nothing more powerful than the truth. And the truth is now we have to take care of ourselves more than ever. Cavalry isn't coming to the rescue, and the government isn't here to help us. So we've got to help each other. So that's a really good thing. I don't have it anymore. I'm just stated as kind of, I don't know, David Morgan was such a radical, but at one time I had 50-pound, I think it was 50, 60-pound bags of winter wheat. And that stuff, if you store it properly, is good for a long time. And my idea was that all my neighbors, I live in a remote area, but I had like 30 bags. I was going to give every one of my neighbors a bag of wheat, right? And it's two things. One, you can grind it and make bread, and two, you can plant it. And because it was, it was from the Amish, and it wasn't, GMO. So some of it you could plant and some of it you could eat, and, everybody would have something at least in my whole neighborhood. So actually I didn't sell it. I moved it to a different location. But anyway, I'm done. Back to you.
That's fine, David. And if people want to follow your ongoing writings on all of these topics, where should they get plugged in?
Yeah, I would say go to my Twitter feed at SilverGuru22. I put most of the pertinent stuff. I put up about 3 posts relative to our discussion. We were going to do it in a couple hours. We decided to do it earlier, and that's fine, but they're on there now. Go to themorganreport.com and get it on our free service. It's the only place you're going to get the insights that I have directly in your email box. Lastly, I'm doing a documentary, as you know. It's called Silver Sunrise. That's the title, and that's available to see the basics of it at silversunrise.tv. So that's it for me.
Well, we've been speaking with David Morgan, the Silver Guru and the founder of the Morgan Report. And David, as always, we appreciate your experienced and studied judgment and wisdom here with us on Liberty and Finance, and look forward to our next talk together.
Oh, thank you.
Miles Franklin Precious Metals is one of America's oldest and most trusted bullion dealers. Miles Franklin is A+ rated and accredited by the Better Business Bureau, licensed and bonded, and has 0 complaints ever registered. Here at Liberty and Finance, we are licensed brokers with Miles Franklin. To order, simply call us to
Discuss your needs and we can let you know our live inventory, prices, and availability. And lock in your order over the phone. Once your order is locked, the price is held for you regardless of market fluctuations, and the metals are reserved for you awaiting your settled payment. Within 1 business day of ordering, you will receive an email invoice detailing the order and payment instructions. Miles Franklin accepts payments by bank wire, ACH or electronic check, money order, check mailed priority mail, and cryptocurrency. The fastest forms of payment are bank wire and cryptocurrency. Upon settled payment, metals will ship out within 3 to 5 business days. You will receive tracking information via email. Domestic shipping charges are $15 for any order under 500 ounces of silver or 10 ounces of gold. For orders larger than that, domestic shipping is free. The package will be boxed, fully insured, and labeled discreetly, with no indication of the contents inside. For your privacy, the name Miles Franklin will not even be on the package. To talk to myself, Kaiser, my brother Elijah, or my father Dunnigan, call 1-888-81-LIBERTY. That's 1-888-815-4237.